So, caregivers of Alzheimer's. You know, there's a huge number of people who are caregivers for Alzheimer's. In the US, it's estimated there's 15 million people who are caregivers of Alzheimer's. And in 2011, those 15 million people gave 17 billion hours of care for those who have Alzheimer's. So this is not a small problem. This is not a minor problem. In fact, Alzheimer's disease since the year 2000 has increased 66%, while almost all other diseases have slowly come down as research gets better, medicines get better, etc. Alzheimer's is not that way. It's very different. At any rate, the story behind Alzheimer's as far as grief goes has to do with secondary losses. And we haven't really talked much about secondary losses, but let's talk a little bit about it now. Secondary loss, easiest way to describe it is, let's see, how about, think of someone who broke their leg. Okay, you break your leg. You've got a big old cast on that leg. You can't get around very much, right? That's a loss. It's not the breaking the leg loss, but it's secondary to breaking the leg. You can't drive your car, right? That's a secondary loss to breaking the leg. You can't take a shower. That's a secondary loss. And there's all sorts of secondary losses that stem from that broken leg. You can't vacuum anymore. Well, maybe that's not a secondary loss. Maybe that's okay. But anyway, there's lots of different things that happen as a result of breaking the leg. And this is exactly what populates the grief in Alzheimer's for caregivers. Because it's all these secondary losses that oftentimes are invisible. And people other than the caregiver can't see them very well. You know, there's all sorts of things that happen when people have Alzheimer's disease. And we're going to talk about the later stages actually today. And, you know, slowly people start to have worse and worse symptoms. Symptoms like not being able to follow a conversation, not being able to get in and out of bed, not being able to write, not being able to dress oneself, not being able to give oneself care, the daily cares, the toiletry stuff, everything. And of course the loss of memories. All of these things call on the caregiver to do quite a bit. And caregivers, as the 17 billion hours tells us, do lots and lots. And as they do that, what happens? You know, what happens is that there are secondary losses that flow from all of this. When someone doesn't remember the history, their own history, there's a loss in that, right? And in fact, when someone doesn't remember your history and calls you by a different name, then that shared history that you have with that person is now broken. And it's this shared history that really builds a relationship. When we have a shared history with someone, as we've been talking about, you know, the whole time with grief, when you have a shared history, that is exactly what you need in order to what? In order to communicate, in order to have laughter, in order to have shared tears, because we know each other's stories. We have a sense of each other's stories. And if someone suddenly stops knowing our story, there's a huge loss there. There's a loss of intimacy. In fact, we lose the person as if they had died because a part of them has died. The part that knew your story is now not there anymore. And that loss is huge for people. And you know, caregivers are giving care. And as things get worse, they give more and more and more care. But outsiders may come in, they kind of look, and they see the smiling face of the person with Alzheimer's, and they see that they're acting sweet like they kind of always acted, but they don't see the real loss. They don't see it. This leaves the caregiver in a very precarious spot. Giving, wanting to do so much for the loved one, but not having the time to do everything to begin with. But also, as you do it, you're losing this capacity to relate. You're losing this capacity to be intimate. And in fact, caregiving, one of the hallmarks of caregiving is to facilitate someone saying goodbye, right? Because as we die, as we move towards death, one of the most important processes is being able to say goodbye. Goodbye to your life, goodbye to your identities, goodbye to all kinds of things. If you don't know your story, you can't say goodbye. And the caregiver can't help you say goodbye. So all of these things are very dangerous for the caregivers. And the most dangerous thing is that they're going to stay alone and misunderstood and not seen in the pain that they have. So it's so critical and so important for caregivers of people with Alzheimer's to make sure that they connect with others who are going through the similar sorts of things. And there's a organization in the U.S., the Alzheimer's Association, and you can find them on the web, alz.org, and they have a place for caregivers to connect with others. They have message boards. I think they have links to local support groups for people, and this is so critical and so really helpful because you really need a community in order to do this kind of work. So let's stop there.